My name is Nicole Cieslak. I am a functional nutritional therapy practitioner at my own practice, Fit Foodist Nutrition. I specialize in digestive issues and gut health, and then also hormone balance. And so today I want to talk a little bit about the connection between leaky gut, probiotics, pathogens, and Crohn's and colitis. So I work with people in my practice who do have Crohn's and colitis, and so if you're not familiar, those are autoimmune disorders that fall under the umbrella term of irritable bowel disease. There are differences between the two that I won't get into right now, but basically what's happening is that there is inflammation in various parts of the intestines and the colon, and then ulcerations as well. So it can be pretty debilitating. People have a lot of bowel irregularities, usually tending to diarrhea, but I think the one most important thing to take away here is that in order to overcome this, you have to get to the root cause, and 9 times out of 10 the root cause is in the gut. It's an imbalance in the gut microbiome, and then there are various sort of lifestyle and environmental and dietary factors that play into this. There are 2 keystone strains that are really important markers for people with Crohn's and colitis, and so these are the keystone strains Faecalibacterium prausnitzii and akkermansia. So those are a mouthful. I'm going to shorten the first one to F. prausnitzii moving forward. But what you need to know here is that if you are doing a functional stool test such as the GM-MAP, which I run on all of my clients who do present with Crohn's colitis or already have a diagnosis, to look for the population and presence of those 2 strains. So if they have low on both of those, it's a pretty good indication of IBD, especially if they have low F. prausnitzii, because F. prausnitzii is one of the keystone strains that needs to be present in abundance in order to reverse the effects of someone with Crohn's and colitis. And those 2 strains together, so F. prausnitzii makes up about 5 to 7% of your total microbiota. Together they make up about 10 to 15%. That's a lot, because the 2 most popular strains that you'll see in things like probiotics are the bifidobacterium and the lactobacillus. And lactobacillus actually only makes up 1% of our overall gut microbiota and bacteria. So not a lot. So there's, a ton, we have hundreds of other different strains, bacteria in the body that we need to have in a plentiful amount in order to have a healthy and happy gut and body. So let's now transition into understanding how leaky gut plays into this. So 9 times out of 10, a person with IBD is going to have leaky gut. And so here's how this whole process works with the 2 keystone bacteria. So you have a mucosal layer called mucin 1, and that is mostly liquid, and that's where all of your microbes are living. And then you have a layer beneath it called mucin 2, which is supposed to be sterile and no microbes are supposed to be able to get in there. And then you have below that your intestinal barrier or lining, which leads into the rest of the system and eventually into the bloodstream. And so you have sort of 3 levels of entry point there. And so akkermansia actually has a protective functioning and restorative functioning in the body. So what it does is it eats away at that mucin 1 layer, but it activates a certain cell in the body that goes back and regenerates it. So it's this circular process of regenerating new mucosal lining in that top first layer to keep it healthy and strong and viable and to keep all of the bad stuff out. And then the biggest energy source for these cells is called butyrate. And would you like to know that F. prausnitzii is actually one of the biggest generators of butyrate in the body? So the cells need energy to continue to function, to keep doing this process of cleansing and regenerating, and they need butyrate to do that. And so if you don't have F. prausnitzii present, you're lacking in butyrate, and this actually has over 200 different metabolic functions in the body, one of those being to create an anti-inflammatory response in our system. And so without that, you're having a ton of inflammation throughout the GI tract, in the brain, just sort of systemically, and this also allows for the intestinal barrier to eventually erode. And so while these two keystone strains work hard to keep that intestinal mucosal lining and barrier intact, the bad bacteria, when they can get in there, they eat away at that mucosal lining. They don't regenerate it. They're like kind of little Pac-Man. They just kind of like keep their journey going down and down and down until they break through the intestinal barrier. They get into your system. They get into the brainstem. They mess with the vagus nerve. And so what happens then is that your digestive process is completely off. You have reduced bowel motility, which means that you can become constipated, or food is sitting too long in either the stomach, the small intestine, or even the colon, and it's putrefying. And when this happens, it creates a lot of inflammation in the body and a ton of GI issues like bloating, gas, constipation, belching, and just very unpleasant symptoms. Then we have a specific toxin called LPS, which stands for lipopolysaccharide, and so this is an endotoxin, and it is, it can be free floating, but it's protected by those mucosal linings. But when that whole barrier is breached, it can get in, it gets into the brain, it gets into the blood, it creates inflammation. It also works to sever that tie between the gut and the brain. You have inflammation, you have brain fog, you have leaky gut, essentially. And so there are some things you can do if you are suffering with Crohn's and colitis to help restore your microbial balance. I will say first and foremost, the number one thing, it starts with diet. So you want to be eating a wide variety of plant-based foods, vegetables and fruits every day. Now this does not mean you need to be a vegan. I very much am a fan and advocate for organic grass-fed beef, pasture-raised chicken, and eggs, and wild-caught fish. But that doesn't mean that you can't focus on mostly plant-based foods and you treat your protein as a side. And today we're not getting that diversity in our food. Our ancestors ate over 600 different types of fruits and vegetables, and seeds, nuts, all that. We only eat, on average 15 to 20 different types of fruits and veggies. We have just kind of like blinders on. We like what we like, we know what we know, we don't want to branch out. And so that can be very detrimental. And so you want to be getting at least, 5 to 8 servings of different kinds of vegetables and fruits. Eat the rainbow. Make sure you got your blues, your reds, your purples, your oranges, your greens, your whites. You want to have all of that different color variety because they all have different, flavonoids and polyphenols and things like that have their own sets of benefits for the body. Second, you definitely want to be eating organic as much as you can because of glyphosate. So glyphosate is a popular Roundup, it's the weed killer, and what we know is that environmental toxins, so your heavy metals and things like that, but more so your pesticides, your herbicides, and particularly your Roundup, that just literally gets in there and it kills your good microbes and it allows the bad ones to proliferate and rise to the top. It is an antibiotic in and of itself. It doesn't harm the bad microbes because they are already thriving, they are negative toxins in their own way, right? So it's going to kill off all the good stuff. It's going to make room for the bad guys to proliferate. This is going to really impact your pathobiome. So when we talk about the pathobiome, what we're meaning is all of the pathogens in our body. And so we have a little bit of all of these bad bacteria. So we have a little bit of C. diff, we have a little bit of H. pylori, we have a little bit of Candida. What happens is when our good guys keep those in check, right? And so when our good guys are gone, because Roundup killed them, or we're eating inflammatory foods that killed them, we have leaky gut. the bad guys can sort of take over and overgrow. And so when we have an overabundance of these bad bacteria, that's when things start to go south. And a lot of these strains are antibiotic resistance. For example, E. coli is antibiotic resistance, and so the Roundup just isn't effective on, killing these guys. So it's going to kill off your good bacteria. And so you definitely want to eat organic, because conventional fruits and vegetables are sprayed with glyphosate like it's nobody's business. And then probiotics. So you definitely want to be supplementing with a probiotic, but it absolutely matters what kind. Okay, so a lot of the probiotic strains on the market, on the shelves today, include those two most popular ones, bifidobacterium and lactobacillus. So if you remember, I said lactobacillus only makes up 1% of our total microbiome. And so we have about 99% others that we need to be taken care of. And so if you're just bombarding the body with, high count, 50 billion, 4 billion CFUs, slamming the bifidobacterium and the lactobacillus, that's not really doing your body any justice. And so what I really like to rely on in my practice and recommend to most people, especially those with Crohn's and colitis, is a spore-based probiotic. So we know that our body is influenced by the microbes and the bacteria in our environment, positively and negatively. And so there are spore microbes out in the world. And so that's what a spore-based probiotic is. It's those external microbes that we ingest, and they actually are microbiome enhancers. So they don't necessarily have a lot of, they don't have your stereotypical or standard strains. These come in and they enhance our existing bacteria and encourage them to grow and proliferate. And they can actually do this. They increase the microbiome diversity by 35%. That's a lot, and that's pretty powerful. So you want to be taking a good spore-based probiotic fairly regularly to get that good count back up and bring balance back to the body. And then lastly, you definitely want to diversify your environment. Get out into nature more. Go to a state park, a national park. Go on a nice hike. I don't mean your concrete, jungle or man-made park in your neighborhood. That's very, very different. You need to get out into nature. Just spend 30 minutes, a couple times a week, or on the weekends when you can, because being in nature actually helps diversify our microbiome. It's also just really great for our mental health and for keeping ourselves grounded and just bringing us back in touch with all that Mother Nature has to offer. So that's all I have to say today on the connection between Crohn's and colitis, leaky gut, probiotics, and toxins. And so if you found this video helpful, be sure to follow along for more. Share this with your friends, family, colleagues, and leave me a comment or let me know a future topic idea. All right, thanks so much, guys. Bye.